I have a message to share with people, and
Yeah.
and I think it's a message that is one of the last few taboos that people talk about,
Hmm.
and and I feel that it needs to be brought into the light, and I feel that it's a topic that is to break the ceiling or break the glass of shame that surrounds it.
Mm.
And and I learned quite the lesson from my daughters, and maybe I could talk about that a little bit later about that and and how we addressed that shame or that guilt that we felt about the loss of their mother through suicide. So it was a great
Yes.
lesson. It was, through the eyes of our children, we learn the lessons, right? So it's yeah.
And to just turn something so tragic and life changing, into a way to bring awareness and help others. And as we know,
Mm.
recovery is so tightly related to mental health.
Hmm.
So, the bravery and the, trying to chip away at that stigma and that shame, I think is
Hmm.
honorable. And I
Hmm.
appreciate you sharing that today. We'll give a quick trigger
Okay.
warning
Hmm.
for suicide discussions and mental health challenges. But
Hmm.
if you're ready, Scott, let's dive into your story. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Sobriety Diaries. I'm your host, Nate Kelly, best-selling author and founder of Pod Studio, but most importantly, a recovering alcoholic 8 years from my last drink. I am so grateful to be bringing you these powerful stories of recovery told by you, those who lived them. If you're joining us for the first time, head over to thesobrietydiaries.com for more information on the show, our library of over 100 episodes, and to apply to be a guest on the show. Everybody has a story. Yours could help save a life. And with that, let's open today's diary.
I'm a realtor in the Greater Vancouver area, and my wife at the time was a registered nurse, and we lived in the Tri-City area, and we had two lovely, beautiful daughters together. So we were almost like the nuclear family in a ways, and middle class family. We lived in a nice neighborhood, we had a nice, beautiful family, nice home. We had all of everything that we could possibly need or want. And life was coming along very well for us. Uh, Unfortunately, uh, mental illness had crept its way into our family, and I described it in a ways. It's like that frog in a pot of water. That the water slowly heats up, but the frog is not aware of it, and eventually it just boils to death.
Mm.
And that undiagnosed mental illness in our family um, had uh, had entered into our family, and it was just so subtle and so cutting, baffling, powerful that it really affected the mental health of everyone involved. And I found myself at 19 years sober. Um, my wife and I were recently separated, and we loved each other dearly, um, but we just couldn't understand why. Well, we weren't together, and and no matter how hard we tried, didn't seem to be able to make things better. Uh, and 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 it was really tough on us as a family. And so on May 29th, 2019, I call it the event. I call it my event horizon.
Mm.
It's that with with a black hole, surrounding the black hole is the event horizon. It's the place that you enter that is before it's too late, before you get sucked into the black hole, into nothingness, or you're obliterated into nothingness. And that was my event horizon for myself. Was that day, and I was actually doing an open house for a friend of mine, a female, another realtor in my office. She asked me to do an open house for her in Vancouver, and I had it was a beautiful day. Yeah, it was sunny out, warm. I considered it a success. I had met a number of potential new clients. So it was a good day. I had a really good day. It was a beautiful day and it was a good day. And I get a call from my daughter towards the end of the open house saying, "Dad, I don't know where Mom is. Do you know where Mom is?" And I said, "Well, honey, she's, nurse. She works evening shift, night shift, and sometimes a day shift. She's probably just picked up a double shift and she's still at work." I said, "So don't worry about it. She does this sometimes." And she's like, "Oh, okay, Dad." And my daughter's 15 at the time, or 17 at the time. And so then and then so a little bit of time goes on, and she kept calling me, "Dad, I can't find Mom. I don't know where Mom is. And she's not in her bed. She's not answering her phone. She's not answering her text. I don't know where she is." And a chill came up within me. And something in me kind of knew, but I didn't
Were there
want to allow.
signs leading up to it or things that
No,
you look back on?
no. To look back on, no, no. Like, she was always the rock of the family. She was always very strong. She never ever said, "Oh, I'm going to kill myself," or gave any indication. It was just out of the blue. It really blindsided us. It really struck us. So then my daughter, she called me again, and then she says, "Well, I'm going to call Mom's friend." And I said, "Well, sometimes she does this." And then I get a call from her friend about 15 as I'm trying to work my way back from Vancouver in traffic, which is down to a slow crawl.
Hmm.
Her friend calls me, and from the house with Caitlin, and she says, "Scott, come home right now." And then something in me just said, "You know what? Is she still alive? Just come home now." And that's when I freaking knew. Like, I was just, and that drive from that 40-minute drive from Vancouver to um, Port Coquitlam it was like walking the Green Mile, not knowing what was going on.
Hey there, future podcaster. I'm Nate Kelly, and today I'm thrilled to introduce you to something that is going to transform your podcasting journey. Are you ready to turn your passion for podcasting into a thriving reality? Let me introduce you to the Podcast Launch Accelerator. Imagine a 6-month mentorship program where you get personalized one-on-one coaching, an action plan tailored to your goals, and a comprehensive podcast growth blueprint. But wait, there's more. We're throwing in exclusive interviews with industry experts, a professional podcast success toolkit, and access to our monetization masterclass. At the end of 6 months, we guarantee you a spot in the top 10%, appearance on top iTunes or Spotify charts, and a monetized podcast with host-read ads. Ready to launch your podcast? Click the link in today's show notes to secure your spot in the Podcast Launch Accelerator.
The police called me. I was about 10-15 minutes away from the house. And the police called me, and they said, "Oh," they're in a cheery voice. And, "Oh, hi, Mr. Cramer, and how are you doing?" And, "Good. Are you almost here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just 10 minutes away." And they're like, "Okay, don't rush. We'll be here." I guess they're trying to keep me safe from not racing down the road.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, good. They've got her. She's maybe she just had like a mental breakdown or something like that. And so then I pull up to her home, and it's in a cul-de-sac. And there's 5 or 6 police cars in the cul-de-sac. the garage door was open, not the one where her car was in, but the other one. And and so I walk up to these three police or constables in the driveway, and these guys were huge. I mean, I'm 5'9", 170 something pounds. Like these guys were gorillas. I mean, they were big guys, right?
Yeah.
They were very nice guys. The first guy said, "Hello, Mr. Are you Mr. Cramer?" And I said, "Yes, I am." He says, "Do you have any ID?" And I forgot my wallet in the car, and I had to. I was like, "Oh shit, forgot my wallet in the car," and I had to walk back to the car, and my legs just. It was like trying to walk through mud in a dream,
Mm.
right? And came back with my driver's license. He looked at it, and then he said those fateful words. And he said, "Mr. Cramer, I'm sorry to inform you, but your wife has passed away." And and then just everything went black. And I rushed the car, I rushed the garage, and I just found that my feet left the ground. The policemen, uh, all three cops, they uh, restrained me, and they gently laid me down on the concrete driveway. And then, my vision went black. And then there was just a voice, uh, you know, in the midst of that terror and that horror and that anguish. There's just a voice that said, "Get up, go find Caitlin, find your daughter." And that's when I got up, brushed myself off, and walked around the side of the house. And when I walked around, I saw her sitting in a chair outside the front door, and she was just staring off into space, like a war child, like just in total shock. I'll never forget the look on her face. And I looked at her and said, "Hey, honey, I'm here." And she's like, "Dad, I see Mom." And I said, "Oh, what do you have?" She says, "Yeah, well, a hummingbird came up to me and flew in my face, and I saw her face." And and I said to her, "Well, that's your mom just telling you that she's here and that she loves you. I want you to know that I'm here and that I love you and I'm not going anywhere." And yeah, and so we held each other and we cried, and the rest is a big long story of what happened. And then the other instance was having to go home to my place, and because my other daughter, my younger daughter, my 15-year-old, was living with their mom or living with me, and having to walk into that home and tell her the news. That was one of the toughest things that I had to say to her. So, yeah.
Had you been just, were you separated or divorced at the time?
No, we were separated at the time. Yeah. We just recently had been separated. I mean, there was no fighting or animosity or hatred towards one another. Actually, we were co-parenting quite well. She had keys to my place. I had keys to her place. I mean, I'd come home and the dishes would be done and there'd be a new coffee maker on the counter. I mean, I would go to her place and I'd mow her lawn. And if she was working a night shift as a nurse, I would just stay there, sleep on the couch, and she'd say, "Hey, I got to go do this. Can you come be with the girls?" "Yep, no problem." And just so we didn't have any animosity or set times that I could see the girls or anything like that. We were welcoming each other's home, and yeah.
So, in our recovery,
Mm-hmm.
particularly after 19 years, we get
Mm-hmm.
comfortable in our routines, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there
Mm-hmm.
can be this level of complacency at times.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's such a life changing event, do you go back to what you learned in early recovery, or did that sort of come to be a priority to maintain your own sort of level of mental stability for the kids and to focus on your sobriety? Did that come sort of back to the forefront at all?
Well, having been in the program for a 12 step recovery group for 19 years, I it prepared me for it. But nothing really can prepare you for it.
Of
But
course.
when you're in recovery, and if you really work the steps, it changes your character, it changes how you're able to manage and cope with life on life's terms, right? So yes, when a catastrophe happens, um, these things that you have inherently become part of your process of having to deal with that catastrophe. I guess if you want to put it that way. So yes, the short answer is yes. The program, um, everything that I learned in the program did come in quite handy, in that situation for sure. But having said that, Nate, when you're faced with a circumstance like that, nothing can prepare you for it. So if you really work your steps and you start applying the steps to this situation, it creates a whole new, deeper type of meaning. A whole new, deeper type of experience, and it opens up um, a whole new universe to you for sure.
I had mentioned, the fact that mental health is tied so deeply to recovery and what we talk about in the rooms and outside of the rooms. What did what did it look like moving forward, especially with the girls? Was there family therapy? Does does the uh, not government, but do the constables set up programs, or what does that look like on the healing side of things?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, for me personally, it started with me within, right? So the first thing I needed to do was to accept the situation immediately, that it was over. What was before, what it what is over. It's done. The second thing was to forgive. I had to forgive her, and I had to forgive myself. And then the third thing is I needed to take a pause, and I had to have a little talk with my higher power and reassure him that this was not going to affect my relationships between him and myself. And I learned this from one of a speaker tape I had listened to like a year before from a fellow named Sandy Beach. His daughter was murdered in a driveway, right?
I know Sandy Beach well.
Yeah. So that I remember hearing that. And then for some reason that came to me right away, in that first day. Right. And so I just applied that, in terms of how he faced catastrophe or serenity, right? So answering your question in terms of the resources that were available to us, that yes, the police, they had a trauma counselor on site that day, and she sat with my daughter, she sat with me, she just kind of tried to making sure that we were settled, we were okay. The police, they have a program that is a program for counseling through that's funded by the RCMP, and they'll set you up with counselors like trauma counselors right away. Because of the nature of how my wife died, and I had two teenage daughters, the Ministry of Children and Family came in a positive way, and they provided us with free family counseling and youth counselors too as well. They had a counselor for me, and then they had two youth counselors for the girls, plus counseling that they set up for them. So they were very good about that, and we're very thankful for that.
If you're looking for a new recovery resource and a community of peers with lived experience, you have to check out my friends, Dave and Susan Kenny at Emergo Academy. Dave and Susan bring over 15 years of experience in residential treatment, recovery coaching, speaking and mentorship, and now as best-selling authors and hosts of Emergo TV. Emergo TV is a live call-in style show where they answer all of your questions about sobriety, mental health, family and life challenges, and anything else you may need guidance on. Let's face it, life can be hard and we shouldn't do it alone. Head over to emergoacademy.com for more information on their brain first approach to recovery, their best selling book, Actualized Recovery, and where to find Emergo TV live every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's Emergo Academy, EMERGO Academy.com, and we'll see you this Thursday.
Well, what I found is that I was just totally taken aback and gutted, just absolutely gutted. And once I had accepted it and I'd forgiven and I needed to find something other than the counseling. Like, is there anything I could read up on this? Is there any books on, single dads that are experiencing the loss, dealing with suicide of their wife? And there really, I couldn't, I went to chapters, I went online, there really wasn't anything for men on how men could handle and deal with the loss of a loved one, right? And and that's when I decided, well, I, I mean, there were a few little books that I read, and I can't remember the name of them, and they were good, but nothing that was specifically talked to men. And so I decided, well, I'm going to write a book.
I'll do it myself.
I'm going to do it myself, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's talk about that process. It sounds like it stemmed from sort of a lack of those resources being
Hmm.
available.
Hmm.
And, as an author, as well, I sort of understand the process behind it, but talk to us a little about your book writing process and that journey, and did that sort of contribute to your healing process as well?
Hmm. Oh, absolutely. Um, this put pen to paper, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not, I don't have a degree in, I don't have a bachelor's degree in English. I don't, I don't belong to, I didn't belong to any, or still don't belong to any book writing groups. Really, honestly, you know, this was during the pandemic that I wrote this book, and I just had no idea. And so I kind of floated the idea to my older daughter. Like, I wanted their permission that I could write about this. And mainly at first started writing it, it was more of like a letter to my daughters and I, because I had been uh, estranged from my daughter because of the mental illness that was in her family. And my daughters were traumatized, shut down. They didn't want to be with me. They didn't want to live with me. They didn't want to, they just, yeah, it was terrifying. So I felt that the only way that I thought, you know what? The only way that I could maybe hopefully one day communicate with them and they could actually see how I dealt with it, how I felt about it, and how I dealt with it, and how we worked as a family together. Maybe I should just write this down, because then they'll never forget, and then they can see their dad's perspective on this, right? And that was my original intent with it. So I talked to my daughter, asked her, and I kept talking about it, right? And I was like, I'm gonna write the book, right? But finally one day my daughter said, Dad, why don't you just write the damn book? And right. And I was just like, here she is 17, 18 years old. And yeah, and I said, oh, okay. And I just said, well, is there something in the phone I can like talk into? And maybe because I'm not very fast typer or
Dictate it.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I dictate it. And she's like, well, Dad, just go on your phone, put Google Docs on there. And I'm like, what? You can do that? And she's like, yeah. And she put on Google Docs on my phone. I had like an iPhone 6 at the time. No, it was a 9, iPhone 9. And so she loaded it up, Google Docs on that thing. And then I tried dictating it, but then it kept messing it up. And then so finally it's just like I was texting and I just started writing. And the one thing that I had to get over was my own insecurity that, well, I'm not, a Bill W. I'm not a Alan Watts. I'm not a, Krishnamurti. I'm not these great spiritual, leaders or orators or writers, that can write 1,200-page books. I'm just the average guy that has gone through this experience. So I decided, well, you know what? I did overcome that insecurity or that fear. And I said, you know what? Fuck it. And I just said that and I just told myself, just write whatever you're thinking and just put it on paper. You can just edit it later and get rid of it later. And so I did. I just started typing on my phone. And I heard someplace that J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter in a restaurant, and it became a multi-billion-dollar selling book. So I was like, I'm going down to the coffee shop. I'm
Yeah.
gonna sit down there, and I'm gonna go to the restaurant, order my bacon and eggs, and I'm gonna write. So there was a local restaurant down in the corner here, little breakfast place, and the waitresses, because it took me months to write it, and every morning I was there, typing away. And there was a few tears shed and things like that. So then the waitresses were really nice, very good. They knew what happened. Everybody in the community knew what happened, and so they put a special place for me in the corner where there was some privacy. They'd bring me coffee, and they knew I was writing my story, and it was a very beautiful experience. And this is during the pandemic, so we're of course you're wearing a mask,
Yeah.
and we're going through all this stuff. So um, yeah.
How special.
And yeah,
It takes a
and it's,
village, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, what were your daughter's reactions to the final product? Have they read the book through?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
my older daughter, here's a copy of my book. I originally released it as Daily Dad Picking Up the Pieces, right? And this painting is my older daughter painted that.
Beautiful.
And yeah, and this is where we laid their mother to rest, and we just took a picture of that, and she painted it, and Brooke put the book together, and we put it on Amazon. So
Love
my
that.
daughters, yeah, my daughters were, I would actually go sit on their after if I'd write a couple pages, or I would go sit on the edge of their bed and I would read it to them. Yeah, they're totally supportive of it.
We'll link the book in today's show notes so you can check that out.
Okay.
Scott, if we can perhaps offer our listeners some
Mhm.
resources or some support for perhaps, in recovery where we face these big life changing events,
Mhm.
based on your experience, how would you sort of offer some support to perhaps people who are going through not this level of catastrophe, but perhaps some other life changing events that they may need direction on based on your
Mm.
experience? What would you say to them?
What I would say to somebody if you're going through a divorce or the loss of a loved one or a breakup they cared about, um, a bankruptcy, you're being sued or you're facing going to jail or you got uh, you know a serious illness in your life and you're faced with these situations. um, I would say first off, just breathe. Just take a moment, pause, take a deep breath, and just breathe, and just know you're not alone. That you're not the only one that has gone through this. There are others, and we're there, and we can help you. And if you need help, just reach out, ask for help. Um, because this too shall pass. It's not forever. It will pass, and it will get better. Um, Life is
That,
transient, you know.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we can get through it, right? These
Mm-hmm.
feelings are temporary.
Yeah,
I know in
like
the States we have the suicide prevention hotline. So if you're having any feelings that you're questioning, dial 988. Do you know if that's active in Canada as well?
no, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, if you're in the States, keep that as a resource for times that, perhaps you're questioning your thoughts or you feel unsafe. Keep that as a resource.
Mm-hmm.
Scott, are you online or social media? I know, we can find the book on Amazon, but any other resources to offer our listeners?
Well, I'm working with Brooke to. I have my YouTube channel. I have devoteddad.ca. I have. I'm going to be. She's going to help me set up my social media presence, and I'm going to be doing. I guess you know, like some shorts to talk to people,
Yeah,
and if anybody needs some help, uh, feel free to contact me uh, through Facebook at Devoted Dad or Scott Cramer on Facebook. Feel free to reach out to me, and I will be more than happy to help in any way that I can.
I'll link those today as well.
Hmm.
Scott, it's such a powerful story, and I'm so grateful that you shared that with us today. I think it's we started our conversation by saying that there is often shame attached to it, and I
Hmm.
think you're doing your part to release that. And I'm honored that you shared with us today. I appreciate you
Hmm.
sharing your story today, Scott Cramer. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening today, friends. Hopefully, you heard something inspiring and that resonates with you. If you're an aspiring podcaster or have your own message to share, head over to podcastnate.com and book a discovery call. I have helped countless aspiring podcasters to launch their show and share their message, and I'd be honored to help you do the same. Remember, everyone has a story. Yours could help save a life. Make sure you subscribe to the Sobriety Diaries so you never miss an upload. We're back with new episodes every Wednesday. Bye, everyone.